Ruchem Aboim B'Shem Hashem B'Shem Irgin Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from our Yaakov Zev Smith Shlita on Ezet Ekunim Mutarim B'Chol Household Repairs on Chol. Today's shir is sponsored by Reb Chol Wolf, Lil Nishmas Oviv, Reb Chaim, Ben Baruch, Menachem Mendel, Tzvein Revacha. Yesterday was Yud Beis Nisan. Yesterday Shabbos the Nishmas Tzur Reb Chaim. It's also learned Lil Nishmas Imi Marosi Leah Toiba Bas Nosel Nota. La Shalom is outside today. Also true of Tzara Chaim. To have the great source to sponsor me, share call Irgun Shir Torah 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Arav Smith.
Remember, the sugi of cholhamoed doesn't need an introduction. It's the common shilas that come up at home, whether it's repairing an oven, refrigerator, cutting nails, washing floor, etc., etc. So we have a big agenda. We have to know how to try to simplify it to be able to apply it to the various shilas. So I'm going to be very brief with the Hakdama because really it's, as we said, a lot to do lemaisa. But I think what Reb Chaim Brisker once said, that the Yisraelis understand that cholhamoed is really Yom Tiv. It's one of the days of Yom Tiv. But this special atayrim that the Chazal gave us on cholhamoed. But the starting point is cholhamoed is Yom Tiv with atayrim. And Bemis, the Minchas Chinuch and Mitzvah Shincha of Gimel, and the New Prince is Ois Dalid, he points that out, and he says it very clearly. He says that really Yom Tiv is like Shabbos, but on Yom Tiv is a heta oichel nefesh. When it comes to cholhamoed, cholhamoed is like Yom Tiv, which is like Shabbos, but there's his own heter. But he does point out that regarding Mashal Shvisas Behemtoi on cholhamoed, it would not be different than a regular Yom Tiv. But the main difference between cholhamoed and Yom Tiv, that's the focus of today, is what's called a cholhamoed. In other words, on Yom Tiv, like Shabbos, you can't do malacha. But oichel nefesh is mutter. You're allowed to cook for oichel nefesh. Yom Tiv, oichel nefesh is mutter. Cholhamoed, it doesn't have to be oichel nefesh. It has to be a cholhamoed. And we'll soon see, cholhamoed could even be cutting nails, washing the floor. I wouldn't call that oichel nefesh. But once it's cholhamoed, then it's mutter on cholhamoed. The Mishnah tells us in Avos Perek Gimel, Mishnah Yud Aleph, Hamavazes Mayadis, Chasham Ein Lei Chelik Al Mahaba, Zok Ben Yoina in Shari Tshuva, in Siman Gimel, in Shar Gimel, Ois Kuf Mem Vav, because people take cholhamoed lightly. Kilu, it's not a deraisa, which some say it is grada, but he says it's not the point. The point is, moyed, cholhamoed has a din of a Yom Tiv with kulis. But let's be more positive. Ramam Panu, in a famous tshuva in Siman Kuf Ches, he speaks about the shaila of wearing tefillin on cholhamoed. Should you or should you not? So he says one thing is certain: yesh l'cholhamoed ma'an schara lo yisupik ba. Cholhamoed has a unquestionable schar to it, and if someone relies on the greatness of cholhamoed, muftoich liskois l'schos. So let's be more positive. Avada cholhamoed has tremendous bracha to it, but we have to be careful. You know, the Eli Rabbah in Siman Tov Tzadik Beis, he points out that the minig used to be more of a minig than it is today, but the minig Klal Yisrael certainly was that there's a tainis bahab after Sukkot and after Pesach. Why? Because cholhamoed comes, cholhamoed goes, and we're not sure we did it right. So the Eli Rabbah learned that the tainis bahab is basically for the zilzul of cholhamoed. So let's do it right, and the way the Yosef Oimitz, one of the Kadmonim, Siman Tov Saf Lamed Gimel, cholhamoed is very dakistic. It's something seems mutter, it's really asa, it's really mutter. So he recommends either learn the halachas or at least ask shaylas. So that's what we'll try to do. We'll try to learn halachas, and if we don't, whatever we don't know, we'll ask shaylas. The story is told of the Chafetz Chaim. Someone asked them a simple cholhamoed shayla. So they went over to me after this, and he told this person, you come to the Chafetz Chaim for a difficult shayla, but a simple shayla, ask the local Rav. So the Chafetz Chaim heard it, and he got angry. He said, no. People have to know that everything is asa until you ask. So it's a good training. So it's mamish like Reb Chaim Brisker said, everything is asa until you determine it's mutter. But the emes is, I think the best start is the words of the Ramban at the end of Moed Katan and Lakutim, and he makes this yisoid. Cholamoyed is mutter oichel nefesh like yontiv, but it's also mutter tzorech hamoyed. The Chachamim said tzorech hamoyed should be mutter across the board, but they answered what's called a ma'isa uman, which we'll soon see, a professional work, that should not be done on cholamoyed. For example, someone has a microwave and it broke and it needs, of course, an uman. If you can manage without the microwave, it's awesome. It's a tzorech moyed, but if you can manage without it, let him manage without it. So a tzorech hamoyed is mutter if he needs it. If it's not a tzorech hamoyed, it would be awesome. Now, the truth is that even if he does need it, we have a problem, as we'll soon see, that this is a ma'isa uman, but let's leave that for now. But I want to try to make us familiar with the sugya. The Mishnah Berurah in Taf Kuf Lamed Sif Katan Aleph puts it beautifully. He says the following malachas are mutar cholamoyed. Davra aved, we'll soon give an example, which means you might sustain a loss. He has a leak in his roof, and if he doesn't fix it soon, it's going to rain and ruin the house. So that's mutar even a ma'isa uman. Cholhamoed is mutar melechas hedjit, or we could do, we'll soon give examples. A poil she'ein loy ma lechol, there's nothing to eat, he could do any type of work. Tzarchei rabim, that is more mutter, and is even mutter a melechas uman. The marshal, the shul has a problem, and they have to repair it. Tzarchei rabim has a bigger heter. You can even call a professional repairman a ma'isa uman, because tzarchei rabim is mutter even a melechas uman. And when is ma'isa hedjit? Mutter, that is if it's a tzarchei hamoyed. Interesting, oichel nefesh is mutter across the board. Theoretically, you're allowed to even shecht on Yom Tiv. Certainly on cholhamoed. Yom Tiv is a ma'isa, shchit is a ma'isa uman, a very, very big job, a very big tircha, but the starting point is oichel nefesh is not only mutter on cholhamoed, it's mutter on Yom Tiv. Oichel nefesh is the biggest heter. Now, I'm going to mention 3 cases in the Gemara and Shulchan Aruch, and then we'll have enough information to apply it lemaisa. In Shulchan Aruch, Taf Kuf Lamed Vav speaks about doing malacha to your behemoth, to your horse, but it wasn't a pet. This horse was your Cadillac, like they say. At least they used to say it. That was your car. You had to get around with a horse. So you're allowed to do all of tzarchei moyed to the horse, because you have to go someplace with the horse, so you need a horse. So here the question is, what is mutter to do to your horse? And don't forget, once we know what you do to your horse, we know what you can do to your car if you have a problem. So on a simple level, from the Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch seems that you're allowed to do misha tzarech sus lirkai b'moyed l'tayel boy. He needs the horse. He's allowed to do malacha. Now, it seems that the Shulchan Aruch is telling us the horse is a tzarech hamoyed. So what would that mean? You could only do melechas hedjit, because tzarech hamoyed only mutar melechas hedjit. So that would mean a car of today that you need a mechanic typically, and that's a ma'isa uman. There's no heter, but there's a second heter, and that is the poskim learn that if you neglect the horse, there'll be a davar avit for the horse, which means for you. So again we see the heter is davar avit. Davar avit is mutar even a uman. But the third heter is based on a Ramban. The Ramban says, we'll soon see the details, but kishuti haguf, nashim l'mashal, they want to groom themselves, that's mutar even a ma'isa uman. Why? Because soyrech haguf is like oichel nefesh. And some poskim take the liberty of saying, for a person to go cholamoy without his car, if he always has a car and now it broke, he needs a repairman, he needs an uman. For him to have to walk is such a harrowing experience, that would be a het of tzarech haguf. So we have to keep that in mind. When something is similar to oichel nefesh, and we'll soon see what I mean, the kishutei nashim is a beferish Gemara, that we mutar a ma'isa uman. And it's very possible for a person who needs his car to get around, he can't survive without it, the car would be a tzarech haguf. And once it's tzarech haguf, even melechas uman, even bring it to the repairman, to the mechanic, will be mutar. A second mashal, very informative. Shulchan Aruch Tafkuf Mem Siv Gimel speaks about someone that has a hole in his roof. So to patch it professionally, to use a keli to patch it would be awesome. But if he's, like the way the Mishnah explains, he's bayit biyad uvaregel, seemingly he puts some type of a glue on the floor and he moves it with his foot and he sort of stuffs the hole with his hand or foot, not a keli, that is a maisa hedjit and it's mutal tzarech moyed. So this is an incredible insight because as the poskim explain, if you use a keli or your foot, but the job gets done. So what's the chilik? Why this is mut and this is asa? Because a repairman that does it is a maisa uman. He uses a special keli. If I do with my foot, that would be a simple maisa hedjit. Maisa hedjit is mut. The third example, also there's a Mishnah, Masechta Moikotin, Mechaba Tafkov Memal of Sif Hey. If a person needs a beged, he's even talking about sewing a beged. So if he's a hedjit, and he does it ba'oifen hedjit, it's fine. If he's an uman, if he's a tailor, then he can't do it l'tzarech hamoed. Why not? Tzarech hamoed. There it is. This is an uman, and an uman is us. Now, before we apply this more specifically, I want to make two quick points. Number one, let's say a certain situation that there's no heta for a yid to do it. Can he ask a goy to do a ma'isa uman, which is not mutter for yid? So if you take our original klal and apply it, it shouldn't be mutter. Because the yisoid of cholhamoed is like Shabbos and Yom Tov. Novos, cholhamoed is mutter. But the question is, to have a goy do a ma'isa uman, if it's not mutter for a yid, it's not mutter for a goy. And the Mechaber says it in Tafkuf Mem Gimel Sif Yud Aleph, Kol davar she'asa lasoisai, asa loimel le'nihuda lasoisai. So up to Mishnah Berurah, the asu chachamim moyed lezeh kishabes v'yom tov, which is music that way is. The starting point is that cholhamoed is Yom Tov. You have a het to tzarech hamoed, fine. But to have a guy do something that's not mutter for you, there's no heta for a guy. The Mishnah Berurah does it in that same Sif Kata and Aleph, but let's say you need a tzarech mitzvah. Can you have a guy do a ma'isa umel tzarech mitzvah? The answer is yes. Why? This would be a classic shvus to shvus b'makkah mitzvah. Why the shvus to shvus? Because ma'isa umel is only asami d'Rabbanan. A guy doing it for you is d'Rabbanan. So that would be a shvus to shvus b'makkah mitzvah. And we'll soon see examples, but it's the yisoid hadavar is, it conforms very well with Hilchos, Shabbos, and Yom Tov. And one more point, I'll be moisa maidah. The Mechaber says in Tafkuf, Lamed Vav, Lamed Zayin, Lamed Ches, 3 places, that even when there's a heta to do malach and cholhamoed, you can't be mechaber malach to lamoed. You can't say, oh, I'm busy today, I'll do it in cholhamoed. If you purposely delay the malacha till cholhamoed, it's also to do. Zok the chinuch in Mitzvah Shinchav Gimel, cholhamoed was given to sit and learn and have more time for ruchnius, not to be busy doing what you're supposed to be doing erev Yom Tov. Ki l'smoyach v'nei Hashem, l'skabetz b'medrashos, l'shmoya noyam imrei sefer, to hear Hilchos Pesach b'Pesach, Hilchos Sukkos b'Sukkos. It's not a time to do work. In other words, the heta is if you can't avoid it. If you could have done it erev Yom Tov, then that's called mechab malach l'moyed, and that's awesome. So I'm saying clearly, our discussion today is when it's not mechab malach l'moyed, he did it, everything he could erev Yom Tov, but this came up, then we have that term as we will describe right now. So let's start with a simple shayla. Someone said he heard, you're not allowed to wash a floor on, kitchen floor, whatever, on cholhamoed. You're not allowed to vacuum, you're not allowed to mop. So I'm not sure if he heard that or he wanted to be lazy, but the emphasis is washing a floor is perfectly mutter. Even though on Yom Tov, on Shabbos and Yom Tov, you're not allowed to squeeze a mop, but on cholhamoed, the criterion is it a tzarech moed? The answer is yes. Is it a ma'isa hedjit? The answer is yes. You don't need a professional to wash the floor. And that's the chayr pashat, the minchas Yom Tov, That's the same. Mechaber Minchas Shabbos, Kuf Dal Etzif Beis, says you're allowed to wash the floor on cholhamoed, because that would be a cholhamoed and a meleches hedjit. He compares it to cutting nails on Erev Yom Tov. You're allowed to cut the nails on Erev Yom Tov, the second days. I saw the True Rashai in Tanyana Kufay and Dalit says, just like you're allowed to wash towels because you washed them Erev Yom Tov, you got dirty. So you have to wash them. You're allowed to wash the floor if you did it Erev Yom Tov. And I saw the Shmir Shabbos and the Orchos Rabbeinu quotes the Stipler and the Sinkarielis all say washing a floor shouldn't be a problem. Now here's we're going to see the beginning of many other situations like this, that Poskim took on self-imposed chumras. The base Avi, I believe, got to lose name here in Baruch, but in Chelik Aleph Siman Chavtes, writes that the minig in Poland was not to wash the floor on cholhamoed. The Ber Moshe in Chelik Zayin Peiches, he says even though it's mutter, but in Europe there was a payda not to wash the floor. Apparently, people wanted to go the extra mile for cholhamoed. To show him was the heiress. Now, rather the base Avi does point out that if your house needs it, then do it. You know, I don't know, in your house, in my house, after a few days cholhamoed with all the children, it needs a big issue of the floor. So if you have no choice, you have to wash the floor. But just like washing the floor, Mikidin is Vadei Mutter, says the Shmir Shabbos, in Samach Vav Mem Zayin, that vacuuming is also mutter. Using a machine and there's electricity, but in cholhamoed, that's not the deciding factor. If it's a tzorech moyed, ma'aseh hedyet, it's fine. Shampooing a rug or parqueting a floor, polishing a floor, that's not done on a regular weekly basis, and that should not be done on cholhamoed either. Now, washing laundry, believe it or not, we don't wash laundry, it's a fair Mishnah, but washing laundry should be mutter. It's a tzorech moyed, and it's a ma'aseh hedyet. But as we know, the Mechab and Tavkuf Lamadal, based on a Mishnah, Chazal made a special gezerah not to wash laundry on cholhamoed, because we should wash laundry before Yom Tov. So we don't want you to come into Yom Tov with dirty laundry. That's why that their clothing is washed Erev Yom Tov, and you need it again for the second days, is mutter. Why is it mutter for children's clothing? Ma'aseh hedyet and a tzorech hamoed. But here again, we'll see that when something is needed, it's mutter. I'll give you another mashal. People ask about polishing silver. They polish the silver Erev Yom Tov, and it comes a week later, and it lost it's tarnished. So the Ber Moshe and Chelik Zayin, Peiches, and the other poskim say, Ma'aseh hedyet, tzorech hamoed. But again, I saw the Ber Moshe Taka says that the minig in their Medina was, we tried to avoid polishing. Now, it's not pshat that it's wrong, but I guess if you can manage without it, you're better off without it. But no doubt about it, if someone feels he needs it for Yom Tov, polishing silver, beginning of the era of the second days is mutter. It's like the famous story that someone dropped his hat on Shabbos, and he was a chosin during the off-roof. So they say he went to the Chazanish and he asked, what should he do? Chazanish says, wow, it's such a beautiful covered Shabbos hat you're wearing. A hat that has a stain shows you're keeping Shabbos. Now, if someone could manage without washing the floor, polishing or vacuuming, so if it's nice, that's covered Shabbos, that's covered cholhamoed. Keep it as is. If you need it, avada and avada, it's mutter. I'll give you another example of, we said self-imposed chumras. Polishing shoes certainly should be mutter. It's not a ma'aseh uman, even though when we were young there was a professional shoe shiners, but that was just a panosa. You don't have to be a PhD to polish shoes. So basically, polishing shoes should not be a problem. And taka, the poskim say, loimi by liquid that you just smear it on, it's certainly mutter. But even the cream, but again, it's an application. You're not doing more than that. And that's why Rav Moshe Netshuva and the Melamed Lahoyel or Shvili David, many other poskim say, polishing shoes, whether you use the liquid or the cream, is mutter. Tzorech moyed, ma'aseh hedyet. The Kitzur Shlah in Hanhoga's Erev Pesach, he writes that, don't forget, I should remind you, tomorrow's Erev Pesach, and you're not allowed to do many malachas. Hair cutting, cutting nails, should be done before chatzos. Laundry should be done before chatzos. So the Kiddush law says that lasuch minalim shekoirin shich shmirin asa acha chatzos. He's even answering polishing shoes erev Pesach. Cholhamoed is more chumrah than erev Pesach. So where's it coming from? It's probably a chumrah. The Chazon Ish is quoted and the Stipler, both in the Orchos Rabbeinu, that they didn't polish shoes on Cholamoid. Okay, what's pshat? Pashut, a person that wants to go the extra mile, he's allowed to be machmir. And taka, our polish usually lasts for the week of Yom Tiv, so you don't have to polish it again. But even Rav Moshe says to do a really good job should be avoided. There might be a ma'aseh. So basically, polishing shoes is mutter. If someone polished them erev Yom Tiv and it's still good, then that's covered cholhamoed. Keep the shoes as they are. They're good enough for the second days. Another point I wanted to mention is cutting nails. So it's interesting. We have our maskana, but let's question that. What should be wrong with cutting nails erev Shvi Shel Pesach? Cholhamoed erev Shvi Shel Pesach. It's a ma'aseh hedjit. It's a cholhamoed. And indeed, the Mechabin Tofkuf Lamed Beis Sif Aleph, you're allowed to cut your nails, whether it's your hands or feet, on cholhamoed. Why? Why not? Cholhamoed, ma'aseh hedjit. The Ramah, however, is machmir for a different reason. Because no one gets a haircut on cholhamoed, even cholhamoed, even someone that wants to shave for going into the second day's Yom Tiv. And he did it erev Yom Tiv, and he wants to do it again. Why is haircutting, shaving also on cholhamoed? It's a Mishnah. You shouldn't come into Yom Tiv because you're novel. We want you to come in ready for Yom Tiv. You have laundry, you have a haircut. So now, some Rishonim hold the same applies to cutting nails. So it's not because of Hilchas Cholhamoed per se. It's Leikanis Keshuma Novel. And the Ramah is machma like those sheetas happen to be sheet of Rabbeinu Tam. So basically, the heta, the issa of cutting nails, according to Ramah, is because you could avoid it. You could do it erev Yom Tiv. Oh. And that's where Ramah says, Zokti Mishnah Berurah Oy Bazoi. If you cut your nails erev Yom Tiv, now it comes erev the second days, and they grew a little more. You want to cut it a couple second days. It's mutter even like the Ramah, because zil basatayma. If you did all you could, then you came to Yom Tiv when you're well groomed. But there's a little more to that. It was negay. It will be negay tomorrow. It's going to be negay next Pesach. It's going to get many different times. Let's say someone cut his nails this past erev Shabbos Hagadol. Tomorrow he's going to want to cut his nails for covered Yom Tiv, and there's nothing there. Of course not. You cut your nails erev Shabbos. So what you can't cut, nothing's there. So he didn't cut his nail on erev Pesach. Now it's going to come erev the second days. He's allowed to cut his nails. He didn't cut it erev Yom Tiv because he had nothing to cut. He cut it erev Shabbos. Or I'll give you another muscle. Someone came erev Yom Kippur. He cut his nails. He covered Yom Kippur. Erev Sukkot, he had nothing to cut, so he didn't cut his nails. Then erev Shmini Atzeres, he wants to cut his nails. Oh yeah, I didn't do it erev Yom Tiv. So after Chashulchan, interesting is egin a chiddush, but it makes a lot of sense. Kuf Lamed Beis, you've cut in Beis. You're allowed to cut it erev Yom Tiv, second days. Why? You cut it erev Shabbos, but you can't cut it twice. It's as if you cut it erev Yom Tiv. So it's those that cut their nails Friday, I should say, erev Shabbos Hagadol could cut and won't cut it tomorrow. Will be allowed to cut it on erev Shvi Shel Pesach Haba Aleinu L'Toiva. And then I saw all the Heintik Apoiskim quote the Aruch HaShulchan. Then he adds a bigger chiddush. Let's say someone was Torrid and didn't cut it erev Shabbos and didn't cut it erev Yom Tiv. So that's worse. So we would think that's worse. Aruch HaShulchan says it's mutter. You could rely on the Mechaber Shita that there's no issa cutting nails erev Yom Tiv period. Now I saw the Sefer Cholamoid Chasa is matmiya. For Svardi, Takar Chaim says you can rely on the Mechaber Shita. But for Ashkenazim, we don't rely on that Shita. So because you were Torrid, you rely on a Shita that we don't go like. So that's got a bigger chiddush. But what's interesting is the Poiskim Berhetiv quotes the Nachla Shiva if someone is always makbid to cut Erev Yom Tiv, and he forgot to do it the first days, he wants to do it the second days, it's mutter. Why? He considers that like a makkah mitzvah. Because the same Ramah says an Isha could cut her nails for tefillah of a makkah mitzvah. So if you're always makbid to cut your nails, that's a makkah mitzvah. Frekti Shvus Yaakov, Chelik Alsim Yud Zayin, but the Ramah doesn't say that. The Ramah says it's mutter makkah mitzvah like an Isha for tefillah. Doesn't say if you forgot to cut your nails. Obviously, the Ramah holds the minig that you makbid to cut your nails is not enough of a mitzvah. So there we see again, cholhamoed is not a hefkevelt. He's always makbid to cut his nails, but he forgot to do it. He shouldn't do it the second days. Now, if someone is mamish ois mensch by him, the cutting nails, this klipis and all her, he's ois, he can't enjoy Yom Tiv. So I can't say you can't rely on the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan's heter is Aruch HaShulchan's heter. The Nachal Shiva's heter is a heter Nachal Shiva. Maybe you could put them two together when a person is beside himself, but basically cut them Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tiv, and then you could definitely cut them for the second days. Can a person iron clothing? You know, his suit got creased. So, again, Zil Basa Taima, it's a Maisa Hedjit and a Tzarech Moyed. Now, the Ramah in Tafkov Mem Aleph, Siv Gimel, already seems to be makel by their iron. They didn't have electric irons, they had with heat. But it's obvious the fact that we have electric irons doesn't make it worse. Because the heta is cholhamoed, ma'aseh hedjit. So it makes sense, and I saw the Kaf HaChaim and the Ber Moshe and the Chut HaShani and the Sgerelis, even using an electric iron on cholhamoed is mutter. But the Chut HaShani, it's Amud Reish Mem, adds a beautiful point. We don't iron clothing during the 9 days. So why is cholhamoed different? There it says Pashut, he says. 9 days a din and beged chadash, laundered clothing. So ironing gives the begadim that feeling. But cholhamoed, the issa is it a ma'isa uman or a hedjit? And it's a ma'isa hedjit. So he's basically makel ironing, a crinkling of the clothing. The Ber Moshe and Chelik Zayin Simon Pei Tes, he says by us in Hungary, no one ironed clothing on cholhamoed. That wasn't done. So again, as we see, there is definitely a number of self-imposed chumras that people accepted for themselves because they wanted to make sure that you shouldn't come to chilul moyed. I should also mention that making a pleat in a dress or a crease, in other words, you want to have a nice crease down the center of the pants, that the pais can feel is more of a ma'isa uman. It's just to get out some wrinkles, that's fine. Certainly, says Rav Moshe Netshuva in the Sefer cholhamoed, that to bring it into a dry cleaner, to make professional dry ironing, about that's awesome. But I'll just tell you what I saw. The Lekad Yosha, that was the Hanag of the Trumas Hadeshen, in page 106, his minig was not to fold the talis after davening on cholhamoed. Now that's a chiddush, because Shabbos we don't fold the talis, but on cholhamoed it's a ma'aseh hedjit and it's tzarech hamoed. So you could ask a kasha, but the answer is that Hamakadosh Hamoyados is a big schus. The Chazon Ish is quoted as saying that he did not fold his talis on cholhamoed. But I want to mention for the rest of us that do, the Mekor Chaim, the Chavos Yoir, in Tafkuf Mem Aleph Sivav, he says those that don't fold their talis, Einem Ela Minhat Amatmiyim. They're strange people. What's wrong? Ma'aseh hedjit, tzarech hamoed. But it's not a kasha. People want it to be more choishish, so tavalei and bracha. But definitely, me'ikad din, folding a talis is avada mutter, that would be a tzarech hamoed. Someone asked the question, he forgot, he's supposed to toivel a keli erev Pesach, and he forgot. Can he toivel a keli on cholhamoed? So on Shabbos and Yom Tov, you don't toivel kelim. But if this is a tzarech moyed and it's a ma'aseh hedjit, why not? The Tshuvas Dvar Yeshua, Chelik Gimel Siman Ayin Dalid, he feels maybe even shaloy tzarech moyed might be mutter, because some say on Shabbos you're allowed to toivel a keli. Shin Chav Gimel Siv Zayin. And also the real reason one of the reasons we don't toivel kelim on Shabbos, he might come to carry it. But that's not applicable on cholhamoed. And also, I mechzik masakin. But that, who said they were geyser on cholhamoed? Okay, so that's a chiddush. But definitely, if you need the keli for tzarech hamoed, it's mutter to toivel a keli, even though it's officially a tikkun in the keli, but it's mutter. Now, we had the shiloh on someone, his gardener showed up on cholhamoed. The gardener, I guess, knew about Yom Tiv, but not cholhamoed. So the emphasis, a gardener is a ma'isa uman, and not a tzarech hamoed. The gardener will do fine without it. You'll say, it's not me, it's the guy. He's an Italian gardener, but that we saw in Shulchan Aruch. A guy can't do malacha for the yid when there's no heta. So you have to tell him a nice way. I'm sorry I didn't tell you in advance, but this is our holiday. It's a week-long holiday. And also the fact that it's done b'fahesia, it's a zilzal of cholhamoed, makes a lot of noise, and it's something that should be it should be not done until after Yom Tiv. For a yid to do a little gardening work, we would think, what's the big deal? Cut off some weeds here or there. What's wrong? Ma'aseh hedjit, tzarech hamoed. So raise that pella. The Mechaben Tofkuf Mem Zayin Sif Yud Beis says a person should not cut grass in a Beis HaKvaros. So the Mishnah Berurah quotes the Maimon Mordechai, what's wrong? Just cutting off some grass, pulling out grass. He says, even though it's by a levaya, or it goes to Beis HaKvaros, for whatever reason on cholhamoed, and the minig is to cut off grass, to throw it behind oneself, like the minig is quoted, but that's not enough tzarech hamoed. So unbelievable. He goes to the Beis HaKvaros, the minig is to take grass and pull out grass, but on cholhamoed, you'll be more makbid in hilchos cholhamoed. No. What did that teach us about what tzarech hamoed has to be? And this is a mechaba in Tafkuf Mem Zayin Sif Yud Beis. So we have to make sure that it's a real tzarech hamoed. Now, l'maisa, if someone has nice flowers growing in his backyard, and he wants to cut a flower or two to put on the Shabbos or Yom Tov table, that's tzarech hamoed. If someone has a fruit tree in his backyard, even though pulling off an apple on Shabbos or Yom Tov is asa midaraisa, kaitza, but a cholhamoed is mutter because it's tzarech hamoed, it's ma'aseh hedjit. But cutting grass shaloi l'tzarech is wrong. Now, I once had this shaila. I'm happy that I found it when I looked during Sukkah this time. Many people have plants growing in their homes. We call it an otzitz. In other words, it's a growing plant, but it's not outdoors. Is it mutter to water these plants on cholhamoed? So again, if it's not a tzarech hamoed, why do it? But let's say it's a tzarech hamoed, and it's a ma'aseh hedjit. But the problem is that there's a whole sugya in hilchos cholhamoed. In fact, there's a whole siman in Shulchan Aruch of taking care of one's field, that you're not allowed to water the fields. There's a Gemara, there's a Mechav in Shulchan Aruch. The question, of course, is, watering a field is awesome. I'm watering just my little otzitz. So in the sugya in Moyed Katan Daf Dalid, the Rishonim, the Ritva and other Rishonim say, Chazal asid watering a field, even a small area, even if it's not a big deal, because you make a light plug, watering on fields is awesome. So I looked into the Heintika Paiskim, and one of the Svarim, the Pnei HaShulchan on Hilchos cholhamoed, points out that we find that there's no chilik, big or small. Why shouldn't the same apply to an otzitz? But a number of Paiskim point out, and the Ber Moshe seems to say there's a chilik zayin, kuf zayin, that light plug is shaykh on a field, a small patch of land, a big patch of land, but an otzitz, a flower plant you grow in your house, it's not a field. So maybe it's mutter if utaka would be a tzarech hamoed, and it would be a meleches hedjit. In other words, watering a field would be also even ma'aseh hedjit, but this is not included in that issa. The Betzina Rav adds something, and you see how a Paisik thinks and sees the big picture. He says, I would have advised people to be extra machmir and wash the tilas yadayim over the plant, because he holds that a psik reisha on cholhamoed is not asa. Doing an issa on cholhamoed is asa, but a psik reisha is mutar cholhamoed. So you avoid the shaila by washing the tilas yadayim over the plant, so the plant gets watered, then you avoid doing issa. But I'm afraid people are going to see that and take that as a heta to make harama on cholhamoed, and that's worse. So just say the halacha as it is. It's mutar if it's a tzarech hamoed. But again, they see the big picture because cholhamoed, it lends itself to certain unwarranted coolness. Lamaisa, if your plant is more sensitive and without a week of being without water, it's going to get ruined. That's a davar aved. Even I should mention, even a suffix davar aved is mutter. What we could say is pashit for those. Most of us eat outdoors on sukkahs. If you have a sukkah outdoors, so where do you wash? Could you wash in cholhamoed onto the grass? You're watering your grass, so that would be a problem. But unless we say that davar by psikreisha on cholhamoed is okay. The Shmir Shabbos and Samaches Lamaral says this, and also adds, if you have to open up the shlach after rain, and all the water pours onto the grass, even though you're watering the grass, but it doesn't make a chiluk, that would be a psikreisha on cholhamoed. That's mutter. To have the auto sprinkler that waters the grass in the front of the house. So the truth is, even though technically everybody knows it's programmed before Shabbos or before Yom Tiv, but I always felt it's a shtickle of a zilzul in Shabbos. It's watering the grass. So many people have it on, many people close it off. But whatever we do on Shabbos, I think cholhamoed should have the same attitude. Question: someone, it was a sukkah shayla, he had to carry from his house to the sukkah, and whatever the cheshbon was, he had to put up a private erev to be matir eating in the sukkah on cholhamoed. To walk from his apartment to the sukkah was also without an erev. Can you put up a small erev in his driveway to be matir eating in the sukkah on Shabbos cholhamoed? So again, putting up an erev, I'm talking about a small erev, is a ma'aseh hedjit and a cholhamoed. Especially today they have these ties, you don't have to knock a nail in. So avada, that would be a cholhamoed, ma'aseh hedjit is mutter. Let's say the community area broke, and you have to have a repairman, a carpenter to fix it. That's a ma'aseh uman. But this is a tzarech rabban. Very good. This is a tzarech rabban, and that would be mutter. In fact, the poskim discussed fixing an elevator in an apartment building, even though it's a real ma'aseh uman, but that would be a tzarech rabban. In fact, I saw this in the Mekadesh Yisrael, Amachin Yud Zayin. He says, Rabban is lav dafka shishim ribu, like in the Yaitz Mitzrayim. Rabban could be an apartment building. It doesn't have to be a huge city. So if you have even a big family, maybe it would be a tzarech rabban, we'll soon see. But definitely, when you have a situation of a rabbim, a shul's needs, a community needs, that will be mutter, even a tzarech, even a ma'aseh uman. The same applies if someone wants to build a shlach in cholhamoed. So if it's ma'aseh uman, it's a problem. If it's tzarech, if it's a ma'aseh hedjit, it would be okay. Look, of course, with tzarech Yom Tov. Someone asked me wants to bind svarim on cholhamoed. I said, why do you want to do it on cholhamoed? I have more time. I said, so you struck out. First of all, it's a ma'aseh uman, and it's mechav malachtoi, and that's tzarech moed. You have time now, but they don't need it now. It used to be more of a question. You bought your child or grandchild a cholhamoed, a afikaimim present. You bought a model. I don't know if the Elam knows that is the younger Elam. But it was a piece of plastic, you put it together, and you built your own plane or whatever it was. So, my Gerst Yankov does not remind me enough, but I think it used to be a ma'aseh hedjit. There were instructions and a child could do it. So that would be a tzarech moed. He enjoys building it and also enjoys having it, which is a ma'aseh hedjit, and it's perfectly mutter. What's more of an issue, the poskim discuss, let's say a person wants to go on a cholhamoed trip, apple picking or fishing. He's not going to use the apples, not going to use the fish, but it's the recreation of it that he enjoys. Is that mutter? So don't forget, he's talking about a malacha. Even though it's a ma'aseh hedjit, but it's a malacha, fishing and apple picking. So the poskim say that if he used the apples and the fish, it's vada mutter. Tzarech hamoed. But if he doesn't use it, he gives it right back, whatever he does. So Rav Moshe held it's mutter because the tzarech hamoed is the pleasure of it. There are two things. There's the pleasure of doing it and the end result you're using. He held it's mutter for the actual pleasure. But many places can question that, so then in Cain, everything is mutter. A person enjoys going to work. He says that being home is much worse than going to work. So he decides to go to work. So it's hard to really to apply or restrict that. But definitely the model, the building is the enjoyment, and the having it, and that certainly should be mutter. When someone, we had the shaila, which also comes up, and that is a stroller broke. So L'maisa, a stroller is a tzarech moyed. But if it's a maisa uman, then you have a problem. So you would have to find some type of heta if it's considered a tzarech haguf. Now the Mekadosh Yisrael in Siman Kuf Gimel, if the child cannot be taken around the gans cholhamoed because you don't have a stroller, so that could be a tzarech haguf, and we'll soon prove this. But a tzarech haguf is more mutter. Or maybe a davar ovid, he doesn't have to be homebound the whole Yom Tov, and his parents can go out. So even though initially we would think it's a question of a maisa uman, which is not enough of a heta, but if the child has to be taken around, that would be a tzarech haguf, which is similar to oichel nefesh, which is tzarech haguf. Someone had he got an afikoyim present, he bought his child a bicycle. Now, I'm not familiar, but someone told me putting together the bicycle, even though there's instructions, is very difficult. So if it's taka maisa uman, then there wouldn't be a heta, even if he's going to use it on cholhamoed, because that's a maisa uman that the only heta would be for oichel nefesh. Someone's lock, the front door of the lock to the front door broke, so avada, he needs an uman, he needs a locksmith. What's the heta then? There it's his pashit, davar ovid, to have a front door open is not very safe. And that's why the same applies if the alarm is not functioning. You have to have an uman fix it, but if the alarm is at least a suffix davar ovid, he's worried about potential problems, suffix davar ovid is mutter. I should mention those that have grandchildren for Yom Tov, many homes today, there's no children home, so it's not child-proof. You have windows without bars, that's a sakana gedola. If you are having grandchildren coming, make sure your home is safe. It has the proper, window protection, etc., etc. Rav Moshe in a tshuva in Hilchos cholhamoed Ois Gimel writes to knock a nail into the wall, to hang up a picture on cholhamoed is awesome, because there's not enough of a tzarech moed, unless you need it, and of course, unless it's cholhamoed sukkis and you want to put up noise sukkah, that's okay. But Rav Moshe took a strong stance in Hilchos cholhamoed that you can live without that picture. So to knock a nail in his vadei mlechas hedget, tzarech hamoed, but you can manage without it. Now, the Betzina Rav in a tshuva, it's Chelik Zayin Kuvav, questions that, and isn't every picture adding some type of tzarech moed? The answer is, of course. But when you're trying to educate people in Hilchos cholhamoed, this is a good statement. If you can manage without it, so in your mind's eye, you have to see that the more covered Yom Tov would be not putting up the picture, not knocking a nail into the wall. Now, the Maisa, as I told you, if you feel that is it tzarech, and certainly on no yisukkah, avada that's mutter, but basically the attitude is masain, each shayla should be weighed independently. Someone needed dental work on cholhamoed, whether it's a dental work or going to a doctor. So obviously it's not a very pleasant cholhamoed trip. But the question is it mutter, because both dentists and doctors are umnis. So here we see something, Machabas in the end of Tafkuf Lamed Beis, Kol Refuah Mutter b'Cholamoyed. Any medical need is mutter, Zok Mishtabura, even Malacha Gemura, because the Tzarech Refuah, Afil L'Chol She'ein Bei Sakana, is mutter. I know it. He's saying it's mutter even Ein Bei Sakana. Certainly, taking medicine on Cholamoyed is mutter. But Zok Mishtabura, but on Yom Tiv, even taking medicine is awesome. So that's the contrast. Cholamoyed, medicine is mutter, and Ein Bei Sakana, a doctor visit is mutter, but on Yom Tiv, medicine is awesome. It seems from this that the Mishtabura holds just for a Meichush Ba'alma wouldn't be a heta. Only for Chol Ein Bei Sakana. Why is it Ein Bei Sakana mutter? Pashit. It's davar ovid, tzarchei aguf. But here's the question: how about someone that has a toothache, but not terrible? It's not like some type of root canal work, just to alleviate some discomfort. So remember, in Hilchos Shabbos, medication is mutter for ein by sakana, meichush ba'al mitzasa. So here is interesting. From the mashmois of the Mishnah Berurah's mashma, just for meichush ba'alma, there's no heta. The Prima Godim and Eish Lavram, Sif Kat and Chaf, cholhamoed mutter lastis malacha mamish tzarech refuah, even an aim by sakana. And Mr. Bura Sif Kat and Hay again says that, like it says in Bir Halacha Tafkuf Lamed Vav, that for an aim by sakana, refuah is mutter. But it's mashba for a mechush ba'alma, there's no heter. Rav Moshe in Chelik Gimel, Siman Ayin Ches, he says about going to a dentist, af tsar cotton, even for a minor discomfort is mutter. And Rav Vozna in Chelik Ches, Kuf Chafei, is as clear as day. It's mutter even for a mechush ba'alma to do any necessary ma'isa umnus. Clear. Obviously, they held that a mechush ba'alma goes into tzarech haguf. Once it's tzarech haguf, which is like oichel nefesh, then there's no restriction of ma'isa umah. So that's a very hard psak to say. Mr. Bura, Prima Godim are machmir, Rav Moshe and the Shevet HaLevi are mekel, but Rav Moshe does add, stand for a well checkup because it works out good because you have off, whatever it is awesome. It has to be at least a mechush ba'alma. Now typically, mechush ba'alma, no one runs to a doctor for mechush ba'alma, but certainly if you rely on Rav Moshe and the Shevet HaLevi of Adam, yesh al mi lismach. Someone's glasses broke, so Avad, he needs a repairman. He has to go to the optician. Today we talk about lenses, the same shaila. So in that same tshuva, Chelik Gimel Ayin Ches, Rav Moshe says fixing glasses, even though it's an umnis, is a tzarech hamoed, tzarech re'iyah, is like tzarech haguf. But he does add that if it's just sunglasses that you can live without it, I can live without it. The poskim say if someone can't see well without his glasses and he can't learn well, so that avad is davar aved. It was like to mention the Chuvas Min HaShemayim Siman Lamed Beis. They asked one of the Bali Yatois, Rabbeinu Yankov, asked Shailos to Min HaShemayim, and he got response that he wrote down. And he asked, "Is it mutter on cholhamoed to write chedushei Torah?" So the response, and I quote, "Oyev Hashem she'or mitzonim halacha, oisem she'orim ne'havim v'yamelech hagadol, yoisim mikol mishkanos Yaakov." And anybody that thinks of a svar in Torah that's of chamud v'nechmod lifnei melech ha'elyon, and then his punchline is, and therefore hadvarim v'amachshavos hahem hem k'magolius hayikarais be'einav v'im al avedas kesav echad hitira Torah lasses malacha b'chalamoyed kol shkein sheish lochash al avedas hamagolius hayikarais hahem, and you're allowed to write it. The Rebbeinu Shloim's Torah is the biggest davar aved. So if someone's going to have to squint and going to stop learning because he doesn't have his glasses, let him fix the glasses. It's the heta of a davar aved. The Shmir Shabbos in Samach Vav Ha'or Pei Ches says the same applies to a hearing aid, even though fixing a hearing aid is avada a meleches uman, but it's tzarech haguf. He has to hear well. Another interesting example of tzarech haguf, the Gemara in Vayikot Daf Tesam Abayit, interesting lesson that tachshitei moyed for nashim is mutter. And the Gemara has a story. It's good to hear for Shalom Bayis. Rav Chizda's wife was being makashet herself on cholhamoed, and her daughter-in-law was surprised. Such an old lady has to be busy with that. Is there a heta for that? So someone came to ask Rav Chizda. So he says, Elikim, even your mother, even your grandmother, and even if she's holding one step away from the Beis HaKvaros, is allowed to be mikashetes on cholhamoed. Why? Because that's the tev of nashim. That's their enjoyment, to groom themselves on l'kavod Yom Tov. And this is quoted in the end of Tafkuf Memvav, that oisa isha kol tachshiter b'moyed. Bialacha says even it's like oichel nefesh for them, and even isha zekain is mutter, even if she has no husband is mutter. No, we have to remember that. Chaba says Shulchan Aruch Taf Reish Chav Tes Siv Beis, for men Simchas Yom Tov is basa v'yayin, and for women it's but not kain lehem begadim tachshitim. It's never too late. It's tomorrow night is Yom Tov. You can buy nashim something covered Yom Tov, but no doubt about it that tachshitei nashim is a form of oichel nefesh. See, I kept telling you tzarech haguf. Tzarech haguf, oichel nefesh is one and the same. Something as integral as hearing aids, glasses, or for nashim tachshitim is part of the heta of oichel nefesh, and even ma'isa uman is mutter. Now, the ma'isa, the poskim do say it's not anything that the isha does to get ready for Yom Tiv. L'mashal, the isha can't cut her hair, or according to her Moshe, can't cut a sheitel, because that's part of the gzeira of cutting hair. Why? Because it's not mutter across the board for isha to do anything. It's specifically the malachis of cosmetic grooming that's mutter. Koicheles, poikeses, etc. Now, Lamaisa, as far as cutting a human sheitel, so that the Betzina Rav and others wonder, why is that the issa of cutting hair? It's not natural hair. A sheitel is a beged. In fact, you're not allowed to wash a beged on cholhamoed, including the sheitel. But a beged is not an issa of cutting hair. Moshe must have assumed that you cut hair or sheitel as one issa. But no doubt about it, a ma'isa uman to a sheitel is a problem. To go to a sheitel machet to set the sheitel on cholhamoed is a problem. But to comb it, to put in rollers, etc., what is done and understood to be a ma'isa hedjit, l'tzarech hamoed is mutter. Question about sewing. So that's the Mishnah, and that's the Mechaben Tafkim Emal of Sifhei. But Lageil and Yanenu, the poskim say a man sewing is always a ma'isa hedjit. A woman sewing, they know better, is a ma'isa uman. But both of them are allowed to sew the tzarech hamoed. But the chiddush is an isha that wants to sew a button or a hem has to do it in a ma'isa hedjit way. So in other words, instead of, if you have let's say you want to sew on a button, don't sew through all 4 holes, do 2 of them. In other words, do it just that it makes till after Yom Tiv. You'll do it over after Yom Tiv. Hem, don't do a perfect job, do a passable job. And for us men, no matter how hard we try, it's always a ma'aseh hedjit and it's mutter. Question where someone asked about fixing an oven. So here, this is interesting. The halacha is oichel nefesh is mutter, even a ma'aseh uman. And that's why the Magen Avraham and Tafkuf Mem Aleph Sif Katan Aleph says the following. The Shulchan Aruch says you're not allowed to make traps on cholhamoed to catch fish. Why is that oichel nefesh? So the Magen Avraham, no. Oichel nefesh means either food or preparing food. Catching fish is not preparing the fish. You catch the fish, then you prepare the fish. That's not considered oichel nefesh. You know what's oichel nefesh or machshir oichel nefesh? Fixing an oven. So the Magen Avraham gave the mashal of what's considered machshir oichel nefesh, fixing an oven. So the poskim say, if an oven broke on cholhamoed, you could even call a professional and fix it. The poskim add, if the microwave broke, and you need an uman, and you can manage without it, because believe it or not, we did manage without it so many thousands of years, so maybe you could manage without it. If he only has the microwave, avad it's mutter, but if he has an oven anyhow, then settle without the microwave. For the same reason, we could say, if it starts to get cold, or gets hot, depending which season it is. But let's say suddenly you need steam on cholhamoed sukkahs, on a late sukkahs, and steam is not working. So you have to call a professional, a plumber who will fix the steam. That's a ma'isa uman, tzarech haguf, to keep warm. If it gets very hot, suddenly Pesach got very hot, let's say, so that would also need an uman, but if it's taka unbearably hot or very mitztayer, then it's a ma'isa uman l'tzarech haguf. If the sink is not working, if the bathroom is not working, and he can't manage without it, that would be a tzarech haguf avada, and that would be mutter. In a shul situation, it's probably more mutter, because typically a shul is a tzarech rabim, and tzarech rabim is a bigger heter. Bringing the car to the mechanic is a ma'isa uman, obviously, even though he's a guy. So you have to know if it's a tzarech haguf, or let's say a person has to go a few places to call a car would be very expensive, a car service that is. So this would be a davar aved. If he goes to visit his parents and he visits his rebbe, so it's a mitzvah. But basically, a yid to do the mechanical work he can't do it. He has to have a guy do it. This would be mutter when it has one of the previous heterim. Fixing a phone line. So They say today a phone, having extra phone is a tzarech haguf. But if you have a cell phone and the landline phone broke, so wait after Yom Tov, especially they make it's very much an af shemilsa. If you could avoid fixing the phone, you only have the cell phone, that's enough for the next few days, that's preferable. We have an old minig before Yom Tov, we like to give the Olam some table talk, some zebach, mishpacha. I'm going to mention my version of the fear kashas for ha'aris, tein l'chacham v'yech gemoed. The first question is a beautiful shaila. You could keep busy by a Yom Tov Suda, but I'm just going to mention the question because it's a share for itself. We saw the fundamental chiluk is Maisa Uman versus Hedget. How do you define Maisa Uman? Now, throughout the Dairis, it was very simple. Lamashal, a Sefer was an Uman who did professional work. The Sefer Torah, Safris, like calligraphy, was a Maisa Uman. The Pu'ula was craftsmanship, and the end result was a professional job. In our door, we find that it's possible one without the other. For example, you could have in your computer a gorgeous artwork, and your 2-year-old child could press a button, and out comes that artwork. Is that a Maisa Uman? Because look at the teitzah, look at the end result. It's a beautiful artwork. Or no, how did he do it? He pressed a button. That's a Maisa Hedget. How do we define Maisa Uman versus Maisa Hedget? Is it the Pu'ula, you have to work hard, or the teitzah, the end result? Now, for all generations, it was one and the same. But today, it's different. You know, Ayid told me, comes to my shir at night, he had an operation, a 4-hour operation, I think it was, that was performed by a robot. I said, what? He goes, yeah. They have to go, of course, they have to program it, and a robot does his surgery. Now, how do you start it? I guess you press a button. Can you call that a Maisa Hedget? So I'll give you a lead. We learned earlier in Tafkuf Mem Siv Gimel, the Mechaber says that if you have a leak in the roof, you can't call a professional roofer because they're going to use their fancy kalim. Do it with your foot. The end result in both is the same. So it does indicate maybe that the question is how it's done. And one more lead, and this is an outdated shaila, but Rav Moshe in the Sefer cholhamoed was asked about taking a picture with a Polaroid camera. Now today even a camera is outdated because everybody has a phone. But a Polaroid camera, you pressed the button, you took a picture, and something came out right away, and a minute or two later, it was a beautiful picture. So Rav Moshe said, that's not a Maisa Uman. You press a button, anybody could do it. In the same Sefer, he quotes Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky that's saying taking a Polaroid picture is a Maisa Uman, because the teitzah is professional. So maybe it's machlokes hapaiskim, tein l'chacham v'yech gemoed. Question number 2, true story. Someone when Achon Shepesach came on Shabbos that year, and he was making a shalom zacher. So he wanted to serve gebrocht cake, but he didn't eat gebrocht during Pesach. So he wanted to know, can he make gebrocht cake on cholhamoed sukkos? He said, what's the shaila? Because I wouldn't eat this. It's not a tzarech mayid. I told him it's very nice. You're right. You can't prepare on cholhamoed for Isru Chag, Feres Shulchan Aruch, in Tafkuf Lamed Gimel Sif Aleph. You can't prepare on Yom Tov Rishon to Yom Tov Sheni, but you're allowed to prepare on cholhamoed for both days Yom Tov. What's the pshat? Tzarech moed and kol shken tzarech Yom Tov. You can eat it, but many Yidden will eat it, could eat it. And I told him what you're asking is a good question in Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, and we have Achon Shepesach on Shabbos, they have Isru Chag on Shabbos, but they can't eat chametz. The question was asked, can in Ashkenazi you have at least a cholent with beans, because it's only kidneys. But the problem is you're going to have to make the cholent Erev Shabbos, which is Shvi Shel Pesach. You'll say, but I'm eat it tomorrow. But if you can eat it today, even though Svardim eat it, but for Ashkenazim, it's an issa of kidneys. And the Paiskim say kidneys is an issa for those that keep it. Gebrocht is a minig. So you're allowed to make the gebrocht cake on cholhamoed, but you can't make the cholent of the beans cholent on Shvi Shel Pesach going into Achrei. The next question is a interesting ha'ara. This Hayris Tshuva, the Enikol Chsam Soif, the Sam Viksav Soif, the Gimel Shin Chav Dalid, he says some people, they're very nervous. And they have to do something after Yom Tov. But if they don't do it now, they're going to worry the whole Yom Tov, I might forget. So he feels that they're allowed to do it on cholhamoed because of chulshas atzavim, because they're nervous, because if not, they're not going to have a simchas Yom Tov. And now it becomes tzarech hamoed. And he says, as a raya, his great father, the Ksav Seifa, when he had to do something after Yom Tov, he would write it down on cholhamoed. Remember to do this on Isru Chag. Now, this has been misquoted. He does not mean you're allowed to do it on Yom Tov to have menuchas nefesh. On cholhamoed, I'm sorry, you're not doing a cholhamoed with menuchas nefesh. Because many people that don't go to work for a few days, they have no menuchas nefesh without going to work. As a mutter, more so, says the Sefer Cholhamoed Klachasai, in the Psicha, in the Mafteach, he writes, some Misha Yeshloi Nervin Leiden. It's not just he's worried. He has emotional problems. So for him, it's a real tzarech haguf. But to do something on cholhamoed because you're afraid you might forget to do it is wrong. It has to be a tzarech moed. And last but not least, someone has a valid heta of tzarech, of a oichel nefesh. L'mashal, the oven broke. Okay, the question is, who should fix the oven? So let's say he happens to be an uman. Can he do it, or does he have to call a guy? So that I saw beferish, if it's a tzarech moed of oichel nefesh, a yid could do a ma'isa uman. So if he knows how to fix the oven, he could do it himself. The question is, if he can't do it, who should he call? A goyish repairman or a Yiddish repairman? So I'm very sensitive to these questions because we have to give Yidin Parnasa. We have to shop Jewish, we have to patronize Jewish workers. But the question is on cholhamoed, what should he do? So here's the catch. I have a heta to fix my oven. This professional repairman, a Yid, doesn't have a heta to fix my oven. Why not? Because I could get a guy. If there's only one repairman a Yid, then it's vadi mutter me to ask him to do it because he could do it for me. But if his heta is do it for me and I can get a guy, so the Mishnah Berurah and the Bialacha both place tough, Bialacha Tavkuf Membez, the Sharetzin, Siv Katan Ches, twice says, if you can't get a guy, you could do it yourself or have a Yid do it. If you could get a guy, it's better to call the guy to do it than have the Yid do it because that would avoid the Malacha. I got Yom Tov to you all. Yeah.
Like a big Yashikayach to Smith for today's shir. Today's shir was sponsored by Rabbi Chol Wolf, Lil Nishmas Oviv, Rabbi Chaim, Baron Baruch Menachem Mendel, Tvein Levrocha, Yotzai was yesterday, Yud Beis Nissen, and Ishmosai Tzur B'Tzor Chaim. Today's shir was also learned Lil Nishmas Imi Merosi Leia Toiba Bas Nasanot, as Yotzai today, Ishmosai Tzur B'Tzor Chaim, there's Tikkun, will be on the middle table behind the bima after the shir. Chananya ben Akashem Marsakash Bochel Zakes es Yisrael the figure Hibben Tayr Mitzvah Shenem Al Neu Chofes Am Tzidke Yagdol Tayr V'Yade Skadol V'Skadol Shmei Rabba Hey Karam Neshiche Hey Kan Megen Chayim Beis Yisrael Bag Olav Man Karam Om Hey Shmei Rabba Olam Olam Ma Yisparach V'Tom 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 Hey, love him, Kobe Chasam, Shirasa, Shirasa, Ramasa, Ramina Vidalma, Amen. Al Yisrael, Varabarim, Atomedem, Kalmidus, Amadem, Kamamodos, Mirais, Rivasarim, Savasa. Hey, Lana, Noin, Khaysham, Rabach, in Uzurachme, Michaya, Richam, Zayr, Viche. Karam, Karam, Ishmael, Viara, Vimramein. Hey, Shlam, Ram, Ishmael, Hantam, Aleinu, Koyshov, Amen. Hey, Shom Reimo, Yashom Aleinu, Al Kol Yisrael, Amen. Amen. Rabbi Yisrael, the Sikkim, we're not waiting till cholhamoed for the Sikkim. We're going to do a Nazis and Makdim El Mitzvah, the Sikkim on the cholhamoed. Shh. Just 5 minutes.
Okay, Rabbi said just as we learned today, cholhamoed is really like Yom Tov, and that's the emes as we saw. Just as Herteirim, Tzarech Hamoed, Davar Oved, Poel She'enim Alechol, Tzarech Rabim. But the attitude has to be that to Mekadosh the Moed, Kilchasa. But lamaisa, once it's a cholhamoed and it's not a ma'aseh hedjit, it's mutter to wash the floor, vacuum a floor, even with a vacuum cleaner. Some are medactic, okay, it's a diktuk, but it's not awesome yikidadin. Polishing silver, polishing shoes are both mutter yikidadin. If it's a cholhamoed, if it's tzarech yomtiv, those that are machmir, tavalei and bracha. Cutting nails by Ashkenazim should not be done. If he did it Erev Yom Tov or Erev Shabbos, close enough to Erev Yom Tov, he could do it for the second days. But basically, it should be done properly before Yom Tov. Ironing is a ma'aseh hedjit. It shouldn't be a problem. Those that have a kapeda not to do iron. Folding a towel is also mutter. Toivling a keli is certainly mutter l'tzarech Yom Tov. Cutting grass for no reason is also. Picking flowers or picking fruit to eat, avad is mutter. Gardening work should not be done on cholhamoed, it should be done after Yom Tov. Watering a plant, if it's needed, it's mutter. Even if it's not needed, could be it's taka mutter, as we said, because it's a, they never asked that, but it has to be at least a tzarech moed. A private Erev that doesn't involve any umnus is mutter to make on Erev Shabbos, cholhamoed. Building a motto, or fishing or apple picking when you're going to use it is a ma'aseh hedjit, l'tzarech Yom Tov, is a vada mutter. A broken stroller that has to be repaired by an uman should only be repaired if there's a tzarech guf, which is more than tzarech hayom tov. Knocking an nail into a wall, or Moshe was machmir, if there's no real need, others are makel, but there has to be a legitimate need to make it a tzarech moed. A doctor, a dental visit, when there's a chodesh ein b'yiskan is vade mutter. Mitztaya harbe is vade mutter. The question is mechush ba'alma. As we saw, there were poisman and mekel by a mechush ba'alma as well. Broken glasses or lenses that are tzarech moed is considered tzarech haguf and is mutter. Hearing aid is the same. Kishutei nashim, what the Shulchan Aruch is matir is mutter. Even a ma'aseh uman that's there oichel nefesh. Sheitel care, whatever's a hedjit, ma'aseh hedjit is okay. Needle pointing, crocheting, I forgot to mention, that's ma'aseh uman. And that's awesome. Fridge or freezer repairs that are needed. The oven is a tzarech oichel nefesh and is mutter. A plumber or electrician, when he's called to do a ma'aseh uman for a yid, is mutter of him to do it. We did see that some hold that better to get a guy, but ma'aseh, a plumbing, electrical work, you're allowed to call a worker. The worker's allowed to do it. If for you it's a tzarech of davra aved. A phone or car repairs, both the same. If it could be avoided, it should be avoided. If it's taka needed, it would be a tzarech haguf, the new type of tzarech haguf. The question of a cholhamoed just for the menuchas hanefesh, you have to be very careful before you misapply that. And as we said, when you have a uman versus hedjit, that chakira, something to think about. And most important, when a guy could do the work, it's better on cholhamoed to call a guy than call a yiddish worker.